Good evening and welcome to the Burlington High School Counseling Department's annual college planning night. Tonight is obviously a little bit different. We are presenting virtually, but the counseling staff is here and prepared to discuss the college planning. This year, it's certainly going to be a little bit more complicated than in years past, but we feel like we are prepared to work with seniors this year. Tonight, each counselor is going to discuss a different aspect of the college admissions and college selection process. And I'd just like to jump right in. We're going to just start with introductions. Each counselor will be up and will introduce themselves, but our counseling staff, I'm the Director of Counseling, Joe Abigail, and our staff, Stephanie Diozzi, Molly Leary, Emily Minty, Lisa Smith, Gloria Wotazik, Christine Concession, Jackie Rogers, and this year we have a counseling intern, Jillian Rosso, and our two secretaries. Our secretaries are usually the people that you'll talk to when you call the counseling office. Mrs. Lewis is our counseling secretary, and Mrs. Kavanaugh is our registrar. So the word transcript, if you haven't heard it enough already, get ready to hear it even more. And Mrs. Kavanaugh handles all aspects of the transcripts, and we will get into what transcripts are specifically later in the night. So first we're going to start with Ms. Diozzi. She is going to discuss a little bit about what seniors should be doing now. So I will ask her to come up. Ms. Diozzi.
So what seniors should be doing now is going to vary from senior to senior. Some seniors of mine are really ahead of the game in the process, and some are going to be applying later. You have a lot of options when it comes to application deadlines. So keep that in mind, that you're all on the same journey, but you're all at different places on the road. So all seniors should be narrowing their list of colleges. You should be learning more information about them, finalizing them. Are you comfortable with your list? One of the things that I find a lot of seniors get stressed out about is that they don't feel sometimes that they'd have enough realistic or safety schools, and that's one of the things that sort of panics them at the last minute. So I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail, but make sure you have a wide range of options, or that I also have a few students right now who are going to be one and done. They have one college that they're really in love with. They can easily, their GPA is easily matches the admissions requirements, or they've been recruited for a sport, so they know that's where they're going to apply, and again, they feel comfortable with that. It's really about how comfortable you feel with your list. Your deadline options are regular decision, early action, early decision, and rolling admissions, and I am going to explain those a little bit more too. And you just need to communicate those deadlines with your counselor and with all the people writing you recommendations. Seniors should also be getting to know colleges, and I understand that this year is really different. You already know that. We are being told by some admissions folks that one of the best ways to get to the feel of a college is to talk to current students and to also really engage on social media, because you can really get an honest assessment, daily life. You can see what's happening in real time on schools' social media pages. They are all offering virtual tours. We have just set up admissions rep visits virtually with college reps on NAVIANCE. And you all got an email about the NAVIANCE visit, so be sure to check your email. That email came from Mr. Abigail. There are virtual college fairs, which are really, they're well attended. They're from all over the country, and those events have been shared in the to-do list for most of you. Does everyone have that in their to-do list? Some of the events, which you'll find in classroom. And engaging with admissions, visiting, clicking on websites, and following colleges on social media helps demonstrate interest. It helps the college know how interested you are and how likely you are maybe to attend if they admit you. So I mentioned reach, realistic, and safety schools, and we've gone over this to some extent with you already. A reach school is a school for which your GPA and or your test scores, if they're even getting test scores, is slightly under the admitted average, or It's a really, really competitive school. And we have a slide to show you that. For example, a school like Harvard is everyone's reach school. So there are students who rank first in their class who don't always get admitted to Harvard. So they look for a lot of different things. A realistic school is when your GPA and your qualifications match that of the average admitted student, and it looks like a pretty realistic assessment that you will get admitted if you apply. And a safety school is a school for which your GPA and or test scores exceed the average requirements of that school. A safety school should be a school that you want to attend. It should not be a throwaway school. And also, for students whose GPAs are over the average admitted GPA, sometimes you get a lot more aid. So those colleges want to recruit you, and they will often give you a little bit more money. So keep that in mind about safety schools. And then a financial safety becomes even more important this year. We always want our students to have schools that they can afford, or where the debt, if you take out loans, would be manageable. This year, I think that's even more important because we want to make sure that you're comfortable in the school. There are certainly students in the class of 2020 who changed some of their plans because of finances and not being able to be on campus. So that's really something to take into consideration, and you really should have honest conversations with your parents about affordability. And last, I just want to mention the scattergrams. That's the data on NAVIANCE. It's an actual graph that shows where you stack up with your statistics compared to previous Burlington High applicants to each school. And these are the decision deadlines that I mentioned earlier. So regular decision is a very common way of applying. It should not be considered less than. People should apply when you feel comfortable. Regular decision is usually in the middle of the school year, the beginning of the next calendar year. And it's a very, very common option. I would say still just about 50% of our students do submit regular decision applications. And you do have to let the college know by May. For a lot of application deadlines, May 1st is the deadline. Early action is when you apply right about now in the fall and you get an answer early. I always say to my students, think about the letter A, early action, early answer, but there's no commitment. You don't have to go to that school. You really should have a strong record coming into senior year. Regular decision gives you an opportunity to show first and second quarter grades and perhaps boost test scores because the date is later. But early action, you really have to be on target for admission right out of the gate because the first thing they're going to see are your junior year grades. So there's not a lot of opportunity to improve before they make their decision. And you can apply to a few early action schools, but occasionally there are schools that restrict you to just one. And then you usually get your answer by the end of the calendar year. Same May 1st date. Now, early decision is because you've decided to go. This is the application option that you put in because if you get in, you're going to attend that college. It should be your first choice school. It should be your favorite school. You and your parents should have sort of gone through the money piece and make sure that it's affordable. You have to be a really strong candidate. One of the edges that early decision can give you is sometimes it can give you an advantage in the admissions process, especially to highly competitive private schools. Another thing I just want to throw there about early action is there are some programs like nursing and engineering, and occasionally recruited athletes are mandated to apply early action. And then rolling admission means that they review applications as they come in. It doesn't mean that you can sort of straddle, but it means that as each application comes in, they review it. For all of the other deadlines, they review applications after the deadline. They don't sort of preview or peek at each application, but rolling, they do it as they come in. For some programs, again, like nursing and physical therapy, they want you to apply early with first quarter grades. Next slide. So here are some of the reach colleges that I referenced earlier. You can see a lot of the Ivy League colleges, Dartmouth, Harvard, and other competitive schools like NYU, MIT, and BC are real reach schools. They're a challenge to get into. And then we're finding that other schools on the left, like UMass Amherst and Northeastern, have become increasingly competitive over the years. So just keep that in mind. We're not saying this to discourage you, we're just here to give you a reality check. And then some of the highly competitive majors, like getting into the business school at UMass Amherst, some engineering programs, computer science or nursing programs, and physical therapy can be very competitive, and that's why you need to think about applying early. The state university system in Massachusetts has a different way of admitting. It's rather formulaic, and it's based largely on GPA and test scores. Of course, that changes this year because a lot of the state colleges and universities have gone test optional. But for those schools, we strongly encourage you to check their individual websites, but in general, the way you get admitted to a state school is the GPA threshold is a 2.0 minimum. So you have to have at least a 2.0 to apply, but a 3.0 admission GPA. So generally speaking, if your GPA is over a 3.0, these are schools that you can consider. When they were using test scores, the point of the SAT or the ACT was to sort of balance off a lower GPA. So if your GPA was lower, your SAT score had to be higher to balance it off. So that's where the state can be formulaic in their admissions. You'll notice that UMass Amherst, UMass Lowell, and UMass Dartmouth are completely test optional this year, as well as several of the state universities. And some of them have restrictions. So for example, if you want to major in nursing, if you want to apply for the honors program or merit aid, you still have to submit test scores. We don't know if that will change as SAT administrations are canceled. So we know the one was canceled this past weekend. If SATs become more difficult to have, then we may see changes to this. So again, we want you to get on their email lists and stay abreast of the requirements. And then I already mentioned that you can't get in with a GPA less than the 2.0. However, if your GPA is a 2.0 or lower, or even higher, there's this great agreement between the Massachusetts community colleges and the Massachusetts state colleges and universities called the A to B transfer, and A to B stands for Associates to Bachelor's degree. So Associates is the 2-year degree that you would earn at the community college, and the Bachelor's degree is then you then finish your next 2 years at one of the state colleges or universities and earn a bachelor's degree. So you can go to any of the 15 Mass community colleges, and as long as your GPA remains over a 2.5, you can transfer into a state college or university. They do say that space is permitting, but generally students are able to transfer. I think that happens more often than not. If your GPA, the higher your GPA is, the more aid you'll get. So you get a transfer of tuition credit, and then the 10% Commonwealth commitment, that's called ComCom, rebate. And then they lock the tuition. So if UMass Amherst raises their tuition and fees in a couple of years, but you're in the A to B program, you will still get the UMass Amherst tuition and fees that were in place while you were at the community college. There are separate requirements for Mass College of Art and Mass Maritime because they're specialty schools, but you can check those individually. This is a terrific option for students who need or want to save money, and to be honest, if the pandemic isn't resolved by next year, this can be a really great way to earn your core credits, your English, your math, and then once you know where you're going and once things have settled down, you can transfer into the UMass or state university of your choice. So this is something to really look into. And now Miss Minty's going to speak.
Hi everybody, Miss Minty, and I'm going to start it with the nuts and bolts of submitting applications this year. So first of all, we just wanted to review the main responsibilities of the students. If they do all these things, they're going to be on track this year. First and most importantly, when we say do your research, what we mean here is mainly that now that they know the colleges that they want to apply to, The way to really find out what's required and make sure they're on track is for them to do the research by looking at those college websites. So don't rely just on us, don't rely just on the NAVIANCE site or Common App, but actually read the fine print on each of those college websites as far as their deadlines and requirements. Also a great place to keep on top of what their test policies may be this year. And that's how you know those application requirements and deadlines. It's also important to know what our requirements and deadlines are. So we're going to be reviewing some of those, but in general, it's also really important for each student to follow their individual counselors' announcements and requirements as they go along. And in general, I also want to circle back to the college requirements. I believe it's also critical at this point for students to create some kind of a sheet, whether it's handwritten or electronic, to actually keep all these requirements and deadlines in one place. It's too much, unless you're just applying to that one college, maybe then you can keep it in your head. Otherwise, it's really important to have one place where you can list what your application deadline is, as well as your financial aid deadline, as well as how many letters are required for each school that you're applying to. They should be making and keeping regular appointments with us. So how often and how soon will depend, like Ms. Diozzi said, on where they are in their process. But if they're applying early, really they should have begun to reach out to us already. If they're applying regular, I say they should be thinking more along the lines of aiming for Thanksgiving to be a time that they have things more figured out. They really do need to be checking their email regularly. We say weekly here. I think maybe even a little more than weekly is a good idea right now. But at a minimum once a week, especially keeping an eye out for emails from us or from the college admissions representatives. And they do have to use NAVIANCE this year. If they haven't already been using it, hopefully they have been. I'm going to get into that on the next slide, I believe. Yes. So why do they need to use NAVIANCE? Hopefully they're excited to use it and they don't even need to be told why. However, the reason it's critical to use this year is because that's how we send their transcripts and recommendation letters to colleges. So in order for us to send those out, they have to have their colleges listed in NAVIANCE, and there's certain things they have to enable. So that's something we'll walk them through as well. It's also the best place to get a sense of whether a college is safe, realistic, or reach by looking at those scattergrams. It's the place where they can sign up for those virtual visits that we've set up with college admissions representatives. It's a place where they can track application deadlines in one spot, although I would, again, really look for the solid details on the individual college websites. And later on this year in particular, it's also the place that they're going to be going for all our local scholarship applications. Okay, and this may seem really basic, but I realize it's confusing. There's so many different pieces of the application now. It's different than way back in my day when I actually just had a paper application and pretty much everything was in one paper packet. Now there's all these different websites and it can be confusing to you and the students who's sending what piece. So let me start with what we send. BHS Counseling Department. We will be sending the transcript. Along with that transcript, we include a school profile, which just gives basic information about this town and school for the college reference to put us in context. We send the recommendation letters, and then it's uncommon to have additional things, but if there's anything additional that the student can't submit electronically, that's something we would also send for them. Then what the students are responsible for sending is the actual application. So in most cases, that's the common application. They submit it right on the website. Sometimes if the school doesn't use common application, then it's another online application on the college website. Sometimes there are supplemental questions and essays that they're also submitting. Usually, unfortunately, there's also application fees in order to submit the application, that they're paying that fee at the time they're submitting it. They're probably going to need a credit card for that, just heads up. The essay, if it's required, is usually part of the online application they submit. If they are sending SAT or ACT scores, which again in most cases are not required this year, but if they were sending those, that's something the student has to arrange to send directly through the test websites. And the financial aid forms is a really important piece not to forget about. The student, really along with the parents' help, is submitting that directly as well. And then if there's any additional materials that need to be submitted that can be sent in electronically, maybe an art portfolio or a music recording, they would submit those as well. Okay, so other reminders, just important things they'll need to do. There is something on the Common Application called the FERPA waiver, and this is at its most basic. It's a part where they're checking off that they give us permission to send in materials electronically for them. So that's something that they will have to complete before we have the ability electronically to submit their materials. And all of us have ways that we walk our students through this. I apologize. They also need to make sure that they are arranging to request their transcripts with us at least 10 school days before the deadline. The little asterisk there is just why, why does it have to be 10 school days in advance? Well, we process a whole lot more transcripts than they may realize. The 200-something seniors times all the places they're applying and all the other transcripts requested. In an average year, it's over 1,700 transcripts, so we can't just do it at the last minute. But if they do that request 10 days in advance, 10 school days that is, we can guarantee we'll get it out on time. They need to make sure that they do send in their application through the website and pay that fee I mentioned. If it's possible at home, I would still recommend in some way keeping some kind of receipt or copy of the application that you've submitted as evidence, whether that's printing it out or maybe saving a copy. And now I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Raza, who's going to get into more about this transcript that we're submitting. What is this transcript and what does it look like?
So I'm going to be talking about the transcript, and as Mr. Adebato mentioned before, if you hadn't already heard about the transcript, you definitely will as your students are moving through the college application process. So the transcript is your student's permanent academic record, and what that really means is it provides a snapshot of your child's academic performance over their time in high school. The transcript is required by all colleges and universities in the college application process, and this year more than ever is going to be a key component of their application, as many schools have opted to waive the test requirement in the application. So just to kind of help you understand this document a little bit more, we have pictures and we have a breakdown of where you can find the information. So this is just a general full copy of a transcript, and if we move forward, we can see the top of the transcript, and this is where you can find your students' general information, so their name, their intended year of graduation, but most importantly, in that box, you can find the total credits they've earned so far and their GPA, or their grade point average, which is an important component, as you all know, in the college application process. And then we move into the middle, or the bulk of the transcript, and this provides a list of all the courses that your child has taken throughout their 4 years here. And it's broken down by year, so you can see all their classes listed through grades 9 and 12. And also included is the final grade that they earned in each of those classes. And then lastly, at the bottom, there's just a little key to help you better understand the symbols and the abbreviations that are embedded throughout the transcript. And now I'm going to pass it on to Ms. Leary, who will explain how to request these wonderful documents.
Good evening, everyone. So there are two types of transcript requests that students need to be aware of. The first one is for college purposes. They'll need an official transcript, and they will request their transcripts through NAVIANCE, one for each college, and they will want to set up an appointment at least 10 school days before their deadline to meet with their counselor to make sure everything is in order for which transcripts are going where, as well as communicating which letters are going to go to each school. For those of you with older students, you may remember that the counselors each used different colored slips, and seniors turned in one for each college. We're putting that on pause this year, and we won't be doing that. So each counselor might be doing it a little bit differently, but as long as the seniors just meet with their counselor and review the transcripts and requests, they'll be good to go. The second request is for any other purposes other than college applications. So this might include an unofficial copy of a transcript that might need to go to a coach, or any outside scholarships. Students might need a copy of their transcript. So we just ask that they come to the counseling department and fill out, there's a white form on the counter there to request a transcript, and our registrar, Mrs. Kavanaugh, we'll have it within 24 to 48 hours, ready for the student to pick up. As Ms. Minty said, one of the documents that automatically gets sent to colleges along with the transcript is our school profile. Every high school across the country creates this document. It's a 2-page document that we send electronically, and it has all sorts of information specific to our school, and it allows admissions reps to more fairly compare students who are coming from different high schools. And it includes things like graduation requirements, mean test scores, how we compute GPA, and this year we had to add a COVID statement to explain how grading was done back in the spring when school shut down. So another piece of the application, just to go into a little bit more detail about, is the recommendation piece. Students were encouraged last spring to ask people to write them letters of recommendation. A general rule of thumb is that students can expect to need 2 letters plus a counselor letter, and we do try to steer them towards core academic teachers. Some students might want to ask a teacher from an elective, and that's okay. We would consider that sort of an extra letter. So to have at least 1, maybe 2 recommendations from core teachers would be ideal. It is up to the applicants to know the recommendation requirements for each of their colleges, and they can find that information by doing their research on the college website. We do, as a general rule, ask students to give people about a month, at least a month's notice when it comes to writing letters. So students should communicate their deadlines to their recommenders, whether it's a teacher, someone outside of BHS, or their counselor. Please give them at least a month's notice and make sure that they are aware of your earliest deadline. Once the letter is written by the recommender, by the way, as long as it is a BHS faculty member, they have a NAVIANCE account and they will upload it directly to NAVIANCE. So students should consider their letters confidential. They do not get to read them and decide which letters go where. And any outside letters, we are just asking that students get a signed either hard copy or digital copy to us so that we can forward those to colleges. It's always a nice gesture to send thank yous, and that can happen, down the road in the spring. And we do have additional forms available through your child's counselor. That includes generic letter of recommendation request forms for teachers, and then more specific letter of recommendation request forms for the counselor. And then we do also have a parent questionnaire, which some of us require and some of us it's optional. So another assignment that students had back in the spring was to complete an activity list, and a template was shared with them in Google Classroom. And we did set a deadline. We know the spring was unique, and there might be a handful of students who did not get their activity list done, and that's okay. They still have a chance to create one this year. Anyone who did create one back in the spring, we're just asking that they update it for senior year, and they can list activities that they anticipate doing this year. And we do understand that there is a delay with extracurriculars this year and how they're going to run virtually. So all that is sort of in flux right now, but students can talk to us about advice on their activity list if they're wanting to indicate something and they're not sure if it's going to run. If they have any questions, they can talk to their counselor about that. By the way, the activity list is not a substitute for filling out the activity section of the Common Application. Students still need to fill out that section. And we have heard from some college admission reps who are saying they're encouraging students to utilize the narrative portion of that section if they want to elaborate more on the fact that maybe one of their favorite activities got canceled this year and they were really hoping to participate in that this year. So they can add a little narrative if they wish. And we just want to make sure that students want to make sure that their counselor has the most up-to-date version as they update it through senior year. We do need a copy of it for scholarships, for local and community scholarships. So that's why we do ask that every senior have one on hand, especially if they're applying for scholarships. And the final piece, this tends to be the piece that students are adding last to their application. It is the college essay. We did share Common App prompts with students last spring, and they can easily access them in their Common App account under the writing section. The Common App gives 6 different topics and then allows topic of your choice as well. And senior year teachers have incorporated this into the curriculum. The time frame about when they might be working on it will likely vary, so don't hesitate to reach out to your English teacher and just ask when you might be working on it, because depending on your timeline, you might not want to wait for them. You might want to start drafting if you haven't done so already. We did encourage students to draft over the summer, if possible. There are also supplemental questions that may be required for some Common App schools. And so we do encourage students to be sure to add your colleges to your Common App list so you can see any supplemental requirements now. Sometimes what can happen is students put so much focus on the main essay that they might forget about those supplemental questions, and they might leave them till the last minute. And you really do want to set aside enough time to put just as much thought into these questions as well. We do share essay tips in Google Classroom. So if students are looking for additional tips, you can always talk to your counselor. And then for non-Common App schools, this is something else you want to look ahead to, is you want to check out an application, a private application for any school who is not on the Common Application, and you want to look at their essay requirements, because it's possible that it might not fit the topic you have in mind, so you might have to write a secondary essay for a college that has a private application. So just another thing to be aware of. Proofread, proofread, proofread. Please don't hesitate. I know some people are a little shy about sharing their essays, but don't hesitate to share it with your English teacher or your counselor or a parent or a friend. It can't hurt to have another set of eyes to catch any little errors as well. And now, Mrs. Smith.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mrs. Smith. Thank you for joining us. I hope this has been a great resource for you in reviewing or reinforcing certain things you've had questions on. So I'm going to start with talking about tests, the ever-eternal stressor for all of our teachers, or all of our students. Tests this year are a very different topic. This year, because of COVID and all the cancellations and everything involved, colleges have really gone test optional. Most colleges we've heard of, almost every college we've heard of, is actually test optional this year. As one of the other counselors mentioned earlier, some colleges at this point may require it for honors programs or potentially for certain majors. However, as things are playing out, keep an alert on the colleges you're looking at to see if they're required. But what I'll reinforce is about 2.5 weeks ago, I listened to a webinar through the College Guidance Network, and the Dartmouth College admissions rep could not have reinforced more that colleges are going test optional for a reason. They recognize how stressful tests are, and they recognize that many students have had their tests canceled. I know of one student who's had 6 tests canceled and more coming. And so this is not the year to be stressing about tests. This is the year when colleges are telling us that they'll be looking at all those other things. So this is the year to be proud of how hard you've worked and what your GPA is. This is the year that you should celebrate the relationships you've had with your teachers, because their letters of recommendation are going to be more important. This is the year where things like your activities, like committing to all those years of sports, or putting in those hours and making commitments to work and showing that work ethic at an extracurricular job, or those times where you gave back to the community. These are the years where that kind of stuff is going to be much more important than your tests. So that means on your applications, those are the things that are going to be, you need to emphasize. Those are the things where you need to pay attention to your essay. It can't just be some random thing you throw together at the last minute. When you do the activities on the Common App, take care in the words you use. So just to double check college websites, confirm what their individual policies are. Test optional also means that if you have tests, you could potentially upload them. But colleges are telling us, do not submit them. Do not submit your tests unless they are above average for that school and you have seen them first. So to get your results before you send them. Admissions testing. So if required, testing should be completed by January of senior year. Check the SAT, ACT website for updated test dates, locations, and cancellations. And also, I'll just reinforce that Mr. Adebato just sent an email yesterday that we are canceling this Saturday's SAT on October 3rd. However, October 14th, they have the opportunity to take the SAT during the school day. You do not have to take the SAT, but you have the opportunity to take the test. If you want to take advantage of that, there's a form you need to complete. And then when you come to the test on the morning of the 14th, you need to bring a check with you. Mr. Adebato asked me to clarify that the 14th is for any senior who wants to take the SAT, not just the ones who are canceled from the Saturday, October 3rd SAT. Any senior can take this SAT. All of the testing will include the essay. So when you take it, you do not have the option of with or without essay. Everyone will be SAT plus essay. If you have any questions about that, either speak to Mr. Adebato or one of your counselors. If you do have to send test scores, wait till you get the results back, and the test scores need to come directly from either the College Board, the SAT people, or the ACT, not from the counselors. It's called an official score, and they have to come from the official agency. So that is the responsibility of the student. You should plan that it should take 3 to 4 weeks or so, so try to send them 3 to 4 weeks before the application deadline. Some colleges right now are saying there's a little bit of flexibility, but that's what you should be aiming for, and have contact with your school if you have some concerns about that. SATs. If you're sending your SATs, it will cost $12 for each school to send the report to each school. So here are your options. You have the option of either sending all of your test scores, and that is the default, or you can do score choice. If you click score choice, you have the option of picking, for example, if you took them in May, which I know we couldn't, but let's just pretend. If you took them in May and you took them again in October, and your October scores were better in both sections, and you don't want the school to see the May scores, that would be score choice. You just click the box for the October. ACT, again, wait to see your scores this year. Each score report costs $13. ACT is a little bit different. You don't have the send all test results that you do from SAT. That one is one where you have to pick and choose which scores from which test date you want to send. Communicating with admissions. Seniors are at a point where they're going to be entering college next year. They need to take the initiative. They need to show that they're able to handle the independence of living away at college. And here is a little bit of practice to start doing that. Students should be the one who do the communicating. If there's a concern, the students should be picking up the phone or emailing admissions. Admissions keeps track of this stuff. And they're not always impressed if it's your mother or your guardian who's sending the emails and who's making all the phone calls. It really should be you. It really should be the seniors. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Let's be honest. How many times have we gone back and forth with people through email? Just pick up the phone. You can get the quick answer. And if it's not as detailed as you want, on the phone you have the chance to ask those details or clarifying questions. If you do send an email, however, it should be well worded with proper greetings and signature, not just a hey and no signature at the end. Dear NC State Admissions, thank you very much, Liesl Smith. Also, there are some schools who offer you an interview. They're almost entirely optional. But if you do choose to take advantage of them, talk to your counselor, because either we have posted something on Classroom or we have separate questions that we have that are commonly asked during interviews. So you can plan appropriately or give some time to think about your response. Okay. And now, Mrs. Watasek.
Not sure to say good morning or good evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about other considerations. So we talked a lot about the application process, all the different types of paperwork, who to communicate with, so our deadlines, and there's definitely students out there that are considering playing a Division I or Division II sport. If they are, hopefully they've gone into the NCAA Clearinghouse website, have taken a look at some of the requirements. If they haven't, make sure that they do that now, and they look at the courses to make sure they're on track. And the most important piece of this puzzle too is obviously communicating with your counselor. And we have to do our piece in sending the transcript, but we want to make sure that we know that upfront early in the year, and that we communicate with your coaches, and the whole family's involved in this process. But we want to make sure that you have seen the information on the Clearinghouse website. There's great videos, a lot of resources, and frequently asked questions for you. For the next slide, I'm going to talk about students with disabilities. If your student has a documented IEP, individual education plan, or a 504 plan, and they are considering sharing that through their admissions process, please have a conversation with your counselor and take a look at each school and how that process works. Most schools will tell you it's not necessarily the plan that they're looking for, but the testing. There needs to be updated testing. But again, this is something that is very individualized, so we want to make sure that we talk to the student about it at length. And it can provide the students with not necessarily the same accommodations that they received in high school. They're a little bit different, but to begin with the conversation with the Student Disability Support Services office at the college that they decide to go to, and just to figure out what they can have for services. If a student decides to apply to a state school, it is, didn't have a chance to take SATs, or maybe they did and it wasn't where they wanted to be. Most state schools, if you do share that information, actually doesn't apply this year, but they waive that standardized testing requirement. So again, it's just really important that we have those conversations early in the process. And as they look at schools, as they visit schools, obviously online, virtually this year, you can see what services that they have at their setting, tutoring. Every school has math support, every school has writing support, but what we're talking about here is just very individualized tutoring support. So another option to think about is a gap year. So this is something that's become more frequent, more, I should say, common in the last couple of years. I think this year might be a little bit different, but this is time that is intentionally taken after high school and before you enter college. Our counseling website has a great list of resources, and in the past, this provided students with an opportunity to travel abroad, to volunteer, to be part of language immersion programs, to do works exchange programs throughout the country or internationally, as well as local programs like Outward Bound or semesters. Again, that might be a little bit different this year, but there are still some options out there. With this whole process, if a student is seriously thinking that they might want to take a gap year, we still encourage them to apply to school, because they can have that as an option, and if they still decide to pursue the gap year, they can defer for a year. So it's something that you can do simultaneously in the process. But again, with all of these options, we just encourage your student to really have conversations with our counselors, and we're available virtually, in person, and we can definitely be flexible through these times. And now I think it's Mr. Adebato will be wrapping it up.
Thank you, Mrs. Watasek. I'm going to talk a little bit about financial aid. This is not a financial aid night. As you can see, it's college planning. However, we have worked with an agency that is funded by the state called MEFA, the Massachusetts Educational Financial Authority. And they usually provide nights right here at Burlington High School specifically for financial aid. But unfortunately, due to all the circumstances with COVID, those nights will no longer be live events. However, They do have an outstanding repertoire of videos, and they are linked up to our presentation, which we'll be sharing with students and parents. They have a variety of topics in regard to college financial aid, the FAFSA form, any type of information that you need. I would suggest checking that out. The other option, in addition to watching the videos, is to contact MIFA. They're a free organization. They're a nonprofit. They always have counselors available to answer questions. They're a very helpful group. They are actually all financial aid officers at various colleges and universities around New England. So I would highly suggest that you use them as a resource. The counseling staff, we can do our best to answer your questions, but we would, 9 times out of 10, we're advising parents to follow up with MIFA. So in terms of financial aid, you're going to be hearing, seniors and parents, you're going to be hearing about 2 forms. One is called the FAFSA form. This form is required by all colleges for any student that wants to receive any type of financial aid. It's a relatively simple form. There's a lot of hype around this form, but in the end, it probably takes an hour tops if you have all your documentation handy. I wouldn't suggest hiring someone to complete this form for you. We do have parents that do that, and that's fine, but it can certainly be completed without having to pay any kind of a fee. A couple of years ago, they changed it used to always be available January 1 of senior year. A few years ago, the timeline changed, and the FAFSA form is now available on October 1st. So the night this presentation is aired, the FAFSA will be available. Again, we suggest all students complete this form. Financial aid is not just grants, financial aid is not just loans. You could also qualify for grants or scholarships through a particular institution. So we do hear parents say sometimes, I'm not going to fill that out because we think our income level is too high. And again, that's totally your choice, but you could be excluding your son or daughter from the opportunity of some sort of merit-based scholarship. The CSS profile. This is the other form that you may encounter depending on the colleges you're applying to. The FAFSA is required by all colleges in order to receive financial aid. The profile is specifically for private institutions. There is a fee that you have to pay per school for the CSS profile. The CSS profile is a document. Once completed, the college will determine if they have institutional funds available for the student. The FAFSA is specifically for state or federal qualifying loans, scholarships, and grants. The CSS profile is institutional funds. Again, it's used primarily for private schools. It is a little bit, it gets into more specific detail than the FAFSA. So this document would take you a little bit longer to complete. But again, we wouldn't want you to be precluded from any institutional funds, which is why we would advise you to look into whether or not the CSS profile is required by the colleges and universities that you're applying to. And again, with the financial aid piece, some colleges may have an additional document they ask you to fill out. That varies from institution to institution. So I would just be aware of that. They may ask you to fill out additional documentation. And you've heard a lot about deadlines from all the counseling staff, but just like college applications, financial aid forms also have deadlines, so you really need to be aware of those deadlines as well. Local scholarships. The good news is we got through last spring with the scholarship program being completely online, essentially, with virtual appointments. We had an application submission process that we created. So we feel like with the scholarships, we didn't miss a beat last year. And that was due to the efforts of the counseling staff and the Scholarship Foundation. We were still able to offer scholarship night, although it wasn't live. So when we talk about scholarships, it's primarily, we're talking about local scholarships right now. Local scholarships are a little bit different than institutional or scholarships through the state. The local scholarship program are scholarships that are paid out in freshman year, single payment. They're not paid out each year. Local scholarships include the Burlington Scholarship Foundation, Adopt a Class, which I know students have heard of with volunteering, and then the Burlington High School Scholarship Fund. So the scholarship program isn't one giant program, although it seems that way. It's a multitude of programs and organizations working together to offer scholarships. We also work with a group called Scholarship America. So lots of local donors will use Scholarship America to post applications. Most applications will be available in February. However, there are some available applications posted now to NAVIANCE. And seniors, if you don't know how to access those or can't find them, let your counselor know. But there are some available now, but we would ask you to continue to monitor and check that periodically. Parents, we know you want to be involved in the process, so I think the scholarship piece and the financial aid piece is really where you can step in to work with your child to help them better manage that aspect of the college process. Last year, actually, it was over $400,000. So over $400,000 was distributed to last year's graduating seniors. Again, it's not one giant program. It's all the youth programs in town, sports, civic organizations, fraternal organizations. Many memorial donors have scholarships, memorial scholarships. So again, please keep up to date on NAVIANCE to make sure you're not missing any scholarship applications. This is just more of a heads up. We really want to make sure you can certainly navigate the financial aid process the way that you feel most comfortable for you and your family. But we would caution you on paying someone money to do that for you. A lot of it can be tedious, the research, but again, we think it can be done for free by the seniors and parents with certainly our help. You don't need to necessarily pay someone to do that, so we would just ask you to use caution when it comes time to go through this process. We've had students in the past that have Googled FAFSA, gone in to fill it out, and then when they completed filling out the FAFSA, they had to pay, $80 or $100 at the conclusion of filling it out. That was not the best approach because the FAFSA form is actually free. So what we noticed is some students are filling out FAFSA, but what they're doing is they're submitting information to a third-party organization, and that organization is plugging that information in for the student and then charging the student. Again, if you choose to do that, that's totally fine, but we just want you to be aware that you should make sure you are on the correct FAFSA form. That is free, FAFSA.org. So again, just make sure that you are on the correct FAFSA form. You shouldn't have to pay any money for the FAFSA form. And now I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Smith.
Hello again. So before I talk about a couple special awards through the MCAS program or through the MCAS testing, I just wanted to reinforce that when we talk about testing and we talk about financial aid and different things like that, keep in mind, if you get free or reduced lunch, you're eligible for many fee waivers. So you're eligible for fee waivers for SATs, you're eligible for fee waivers for applications, which sometimes can be kind of pricey. Sometimes they're up near 75, 80, and I'm noticing them inching higher and higher. So if you qualify for free or reduced lunch, make sure your counselor is aware of that. So, MCAS awards. Back when the seniors were sophomores and freshmen, they took the MCAS. And based on your scores, you could be eligible for a tuition discount. It's not a complete tuition waiver, So I just want you to be aware of that. But there is a tuition discount either through the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship or the Koplik Certificate of Mastery. Use one or the other. So let me show you what the differences are. The Adams Scholarship is for students who are in the top 25% of their class. If you were in the top 25% of your class and your scores, your MCAS scores, I should say, are in the top 25% of your class, you do not have to do anything, and you will get a letter at some point this fall, October-ish usually, late October. You will be notified and get this letter. You don't have to do anything else. You just give that letter to the financial aid department of UMass Amherst, for example, and they will credit your account. The Koplik, on the other hand, your scores are still very strong. However, you are not in the top 25%, and you'd have to do 2 extra things in order to get this scholarship. The amount is the same, but you have to do 2 extra things, like take an SAT subject test, take an AP exam, take a dual enrollment class, or there's a list of other academic achievements. Now, I know there's some concern about, SAT subject test, how can I get that done? Or APs, I'm taking AP classes now, but I won't get my results back until next July. That's fine. Set these up, fill out your application. It's due in May to Mr. Adebato. And then when we get your score, the state who collects the Koplik, they just need your scores by the end of the year. So you could even be taking SATs in May or June, should you choose. And in fact, for the class that just graduated, their chance to take the SAT test has been extended through December. So you have quite a while. Notice with the Koplik, if you get that one, you have to keep a GPA of a 3.3 or higher, and you need to have filled out a FAFSA. But I would work, if you're considering the Koplik, work with your counselor on that just to make sure you're all set up for exactly what you need. Selective service for all 18-year-old and over males, you must register. Otherwise, you are not eligible for federal financial aid. You can register at the post office. There's a box to check on the FAFSA application, or you can go to the Selective Service sss.gov website. If you have questions about the conscientious objector status, Ms. Diozzi has quite a bit of information about that. You can see her. So to wrap up the application, after students apply, you should be aware that all first quarter, mid-year, and final transcripts are all automatically sent by your counselor through NAVIANCE. Students should, so we will take care of that. You don't have to request that. Students, however, should make sure that the college has received their application. Now keep in mind, colleges are swamped with applications. Just because you submit it does not mean that, even though it's electronic, does not mean that they actually record it in their system for potentially 2 or 3 weeks. I know that's a little anxiety-provoking, but you need to be aware of that. If you check on NAVIANCE, you can see that the counselor has sent your stuff, so then you can rest assured that it's just waiting to be processed by the college. After you get your applications done, turn your attention to scholarship applications. Look under the financial aid part of NAVIANCE. There's the list of local scholarships that Mr. Adebato mentioned. Start taking care of the FAFSA. Do the CSS profile if it's required. If you get your results back from your college and you're deferred or waitlisted, talk to your counselor if you want to move forward with whatever school you didn't get into initially and you've been deferred or waitlisted, about what is the best approach to take moving forward. Just a reminder that even if, unless you apply early decision, which is the admissions option where you apply to one school and you are committing to go there if you get in, If you apply early action or regular or rolling, you have until May 1st to make a commitment. You don't have to commit earlier than that. You can if you want to lock in your housing or lock in certain other perks, but you do not have to commit to May 1st. That is when your deposit is due, and you may not deposit to more than one college. Burlington Counseling Office also cannot send more than one transcript, cannot send a transcript to more than one college as well. And remember that offers of admissions are conditional based on continued good grades and good behavior. We have seen cases where students have had senioritis and have their grades, they haven't maintained that same level of progress, their grades have dropped, and colleges will send warnings of losing scholarship money, or if they don't maintain a certain level of academics, then they are in warning of having their admissions rescinded. Especially this is true, be careful what you post. Be careful of certain things that you might put out there in the public, because there have been situations where people's admissions have been rescinded. Good luck to you in the admissions process. And next, Ms. Rogers, our school social worker, is going to be talking about how to stay sane during all this.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Ms. Rogers, and as Mrs. Smith just shared, a part of my role is to help students and families learn helpful strategies for managing stress. Part of my role as a school adjustment counselor here. We know that the college application process can absolutely be a time of increased stress. And when we add the additional factor of COVID-19, stress levels are probably running especially high right now. So the first piece of information I want to go through it's a few quick tips for students and parents and families to work together in order to kind of best navigate this process. So we're going to go through a bit of a do's and don'ts list. So how parents and families can help. First of all, do discuss restrictions up front. So what I mean by that is if there are any parameters around colleges that a family might be able to send their child to or not, you want to be very kind of clear about that as you begin the process. Second, don't limit choices based on sticker price. As I'm sure we've heard from a number of counselors today, there are scholarships, there's financial aid, there are a lot of different categories here that might make the actual cost of tuition different than its original sticker price. So that's something to absolutely be in touch with your school counselors about. Also, another do, remind your child of deadlines. So it can certainly help to work together for parents, families to kind of keep a master calendar of deadlines, give gentle reminders. Again, encourage your student to set their own reminders as well. I know that a number of students like to keep reminders in their phone or their device. So work together to provide reminders and also encourage your son or daughter, your child, to set their own reminder system as well. A don't, and I think this is a tough one, but as much as possible, as a parent, we want to try to avoid nagging our children. And this is difficult when we're feeling pressure of getting those applications in, but again, I try to frame this as reminders and support without being a bit of a helicopter parent or guardian, if possible. Do try to limit conversations to one time per week. I know this sounds a little bit formulaic, but if we're having the same conversation about applications and deadlines every night or multiple times a day, that's just going to increase stress levels and can often lead to feelings of shutdown and behaviors like avoidance if students are feeling even more overwhelmed by having to have the same conversation over and over. So maybe once a week, maybe during a family outing, dinner, whatever is a time where maybe stress levels are already a bit lower, could be a good time to bring this up once a week. This is a definitely important one. So do let your child be the one to make the contacts. I know we've heard a similar refrain from a number of school counselors today. When we think about where seniors currently are at in their lives and the fact that they're planning to attend college and begin this new chapter in their life as young adults, it is really important to support while your child is in fact, in the driver's seat. So making the contacts on their own and doing a lot independently with your support from the sidelines, if that makes sense. Do help your children with financial aid paperwork. So this is something that really does need to be collaborative as much as possible. You as the parent or guardian will most likely have more access to the type of information that is required in order to complete financial aid forms. So definitely a team process here. And a last do, be your child's cheerleader. I know I kind of already used that sports analogy to be supporting from the sidelines. So as much as you can play that supportive role, offer encouragement, the better. All right, a little bit more on stress prevention. As I know I already mentioned, we know that the college application is a stressful time for all. So how can we as parents or guardians help? So one tip is to be proactive and stay organized. So the more that your child can stay on top of deadlines and chip away, have a system that works for them, the better. That will just minimize stress. Additionally, really an important one. I know it's something that I discuss a lot in my work with juniors and seniors who are thinking about college or beginning the process or well into the process, is that there is a college for everyone. We have so many schools right here in Boston and Massachusetts, across the country. There's no one school. There are multiple paths to attend college and to pursue a career of interest to you. So really keep that in mind. Additionally, if early deadlines are too overwhelming and it's causing feelings of shutdown to even think about early action or early decision, apply to colleges that are taking the regular deadline. That's perfectly fine and a good way to manage stress. Students, try very hard not to leave your parents or guardians in the dark about the process. Again, I know I said that one time a week having this conversation is probably better than every day or all day every day. Hopefully that's not happening. However, the more you can be transparent with your families about where you're at in the process, the better, because that way there's open communication, everybody's on the same page, your families can help remind you of what you need to attend to, and there's not going to be this moment where a lot of information comes to light that maybe you haven't been sharing along the way that could create additional stress. So really communicate openly. I say that to parents, to families, and students. Parents and families, so listen carefully to your teens, watch for overloading. So in terms of the listening carefully, listening actively, we as parents, as guardians might have a desire to do some problem solving, but the more you can step back and really hear what your teen is saying, the more you're gonna be able to support them. So really keep that active listening ear and watch for signs of stress so that you can help your child. And lastly, students, ask for help when you need help. So it's really all going to go much more smoothly if you ask for help from parents as needed, from your family members, from your school counselors. The more you can take an active role and seek the support you need, the better. As I've mentioned, I work with a number of students who are often feeling stress around the process, so I am a person to seek out as well. And we have both supports in the school and outside of the school for stress management. So this is just a little diagram. This is called Yerkes-Dodson law. So this graphic just goes over kind of the optimal arousal and performance level of stress. And if anything, a takeaway about this slide is just that there are levels of stress that cause us to perform well. And then there are levels of stress that are so overwhelming that we really shut down. So what we want to strive to do by kind of utilizing a lot of the tips I just went over is to keep our stress level in an optimal place so that we're not so laid back that we're maybe not motivated to complete applications and to take care of all the details we need to, but that we're not so stressed on the other side of that curve that we're avoiding, that we're feeling paralyzed by the process. So our goal, by staying organized, by seeking support, by working together as students and parents and families, by working with your counselors, is to stay kind of in that middle optimal stress level that allows you to perform well without things feeling too overwhelming. So that's pretty much it for me, but I just want to give a reminder again, seek support, we are here to help, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Adebato.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. This concludes the event for tonight. We encourage seniors and parents to please email me or your son or daughter's respective guidance counselor with any questions. Counselors have started meeting with seniors. Certainly with the cohort model, it makes it more of a challenge to meet in person, but counselors have been holding either in-person or virtual meetings. Parents, if you have any questions, like I said, please email us and let us know. A couple other pieces of information to be aware of. As you know, we use the NAVIANCE program for the college application process. Parents, you can get access to this program. Several parents already do have access. If you would like to receive login information, please email Mrs. Kavanaugh, our registrar, and she can register you as a parent with the NAVIANCE program. We do prefer that parents and students have separate accounts. You do have access to the same information, but we do like to track our data on NAVIANCE for parent and student usage. And we do send blanket emails to just parents. So we wouldn't want parents to miss out on any kind of an opportunity because you're using your child's account. Also, you heard the counselors talk about a senior parent questionnaire. This questionnaire, again, is specifically for letters of recommendations written by the counselors. The counselors would share that questionnaire with students either through email or through each counselor's specific Google Classroom. So keep your eyes out for that. Again, that just can help us further supplement our letter of recommendation that we write for your son or daughter. And again, we thank you for watching tonight. Feel free to be in touch if you have any questions or concerns. Seniors, good luck this fall. Thank you very much.